Aloha. With this build, I wanted to build off the last video that I just uploaded, which was the psychology of the Matrix, and kind of bring a lot of those older clips up to date to share with people, like where I'm coming from in reference to addressing the system, just bringing about an awareness that there is a system for some people that still can't see what's going on here. Like I was just involved in a back and forth on Instagram with a young lady who was praising this guy. Like I responded to a meme that was made about a guy who raised $27,000 for the Black Panther movie. Well, for kids to go see the Black Panther movie. In one perspective, you can see that as great. Wow, somebody did something to help the kids. Wonderful. The other side of that, which is pretty much another world, is the Marvel universe. Hollywood itself is a definite mind control program, no matter what individual actors are out there. And people have been so desensitized. People have been beaten down for so long, have zero connection or understandings with who and what they are, their culture, that they would just accept. Her response basically was, why would you come down on somebody who's helping kids see another person who looks like them on the television, as if the television is the most successful way to be. Like, we've been so shrunk down, have so very little meaning and purpose, that it's no different than applauding all over the place for the first so-called black president. Why? Just because he's black. Like, it doesn't mean anything. And a lot of the defense mechanisms that are in the so-called black conscious community, they need to be really addressed. They need to be spoken about. So in reference to like interracial relationships, like that inherently promotes a self-hatred, the perspective that not all but many people in the black conscious community have towards either mixed people or interracial relationships is it shouldn't happen because you need to be supporting black this and black that. And then even that, it's complex because some people say, well, you need to have black babies, or you need to promote black businesses. You need to, if you have money, you don't need to be marrying a white woman, because most white women who marry black men are going to be not as rich or not as financially stable as the so-called black man. So you, in that situation, you have people so-called marrying up while other people are marrying down. So when you have a you can see how all of this, the main thing is that all of it is based upon finances. You can see how shallow this shit is. So these things are just not spoken about because of the existence of white supremacy and the fact that it's still alive. It's just gone underground in a sense. And when you see stuff like this H&M thing that's going on, you can see that it's not completely underground. It's very much on the surface, and it's also being triggered by the society to have a particular effect on people, which is chaos, which is, as long as you get people riled up when they're in this mid-level of consciousness where they don't really have any roots planted, they don't have any structure. And I'll get into that towards the last slide on this, more formally laying out the mindset of people to where we have this illusion of progress. We have this illusion of coming together or doing something, where largely the system is just based upon keeping you enslaved in their program while they maintain the program of haves over the have-nots. So it's extremely complex, and what it really boils down to is that there is no one thing, there's no one certain thing that is going to save the world. So when you have Bill Nye on there saying he's going to save the world, he's telling you he's saving the world based upon the complexities that are in his the complex stories that are in his episodes within his TV show. So he says that, and he's basically saying this is the commercial version of what the so-called world is faced with. And largely all of it is an illusion. Most of it is just designed to make you believe in the mind control programs of the system, in the Hegelian dialectic of the system, in the systems that promote monkey evolution, heliocentrism, the prison industrial complex, the military industrial complex. They mention a lot of these things, but they don't mention them from a perspective of doing anything with them. Largely, these perspectives are mentioned just to mention them, and also to promote a hopeless and helpless perspective to where, it's just something that we have to deal with. Just got to deal with it. It exists. It's in society right now, and basically there's nothing you can do about it. So once you're locked into that mentality, the only person to dig you out of that is yourself. It's designed to be a trap. So you have people trapped in this idea of everything is based upon, race or melanin because of the white supremacy program that is a very complex mind control program. The thing is, that's not your true power. That's power in reaction to. So yes, it is a power to bring about the systems that promote white supremacy. It is a power to have so-called black-owned businesses. It is a power to, have a. It's a very powerful and beautiful thing to have a black woman and a black man have a black baby and create a strong family. That's not to say it's better than anybody else. It's just to say that it's a very definite thing that's beautiful and that should be done if people are guided in their own inner feelings and their inner standings to do that. The same thing should be said for other people who are not black, who are, just say, Mexican and a black man, or a black woman and a Mexican. It doesn't matter. Whatever. If they feel guided to come together, then who's anybody else to say that they shouldn't, based upon whatever finances, based upon white supremacy or whatever it is. See, the thing with the whole interracial relationship dating thing that is a problem for the black conscious community is because the system of white supremacy has used race and genetics as a weapon against the people in order to save its own genetic makeup in society. That mechanism was used, but it failed because you can see that they tried to destroy, genocide the masses of people, and you can see that we're not even seen as human. Look, like this H&M thing, we're seen as animals, we're seen as monkeys. And then you listen to the Trump shit that's going on right now. He calls El Salvador, parts of Africa, and Haiti shithole countries. So those are shithole people, and all the stuff that's gone into like why those countries became the way, like third world, like I've mentioned in previous videos, third world countries become third world countries largely because the so-called first world countries has colonized and sucked the resources out of those lands and have installed their so-called democracy, their so-called religion, their church, their this, and their democratic way of life, and that whole thing. It's all an illusion to backhandedly promote the same programs that were being promoted back in the day, back when overt racism was manifesting into the whipping post and alligator bait and lynchings and burnings and just straight up like Emmett Till just straight up getting away from the criminal system. They killed that little boy and then smoked cigars right after the verdict. Like, this is not that long ago. This is not that long ago. And people think that, oh yeah, well, things are changing. They've changed now, so we should just move on. See, the majority of people, and I'll use the term white because there are no white people. I'll use the term white to reference the ignorance of this program, because some people are white supremacists and they don't even know it, because you're protecting the white supremacist system. If you're it's like the people who are protecting or backing up Trump after he said that shithole statement. Like, you might not be totally so-called racist, but you are in the umpteenth degree. You have a passing grade for racist tendencies, 101, when you follow up with that kind of mentality, because the part of you that is thinking for yourself might not be racist, but you largely are not thinking for yourself. The little crumbs of you thinking for yourself is in like the single digit percentiles of your entire consciousness. The majority of people that are looking at this system in society are just regurgitating shit that's coming on the mainstream media or alternative news, conspiracy. They're not thinking for themselves. And that's what the system banks on, is for people to not think for themselves, so they can tell them what to think about and how to feel, how to act, and how to basically, like in the video, the real Black Panther movie that I just uploaded before this one, towards the end, Dr. Joy DeGruy was explaining what's the biggest problem with all of the injustices and the tragedies that have been inflicted upon Black and brown peoples, not only just in the United States, but across the world. What are the side effects that that affect us now? And it's the lack of empathy, she says. When you see a little girl standing in a picture next to a lynched man or a burned man, and all these people dressed up in suits and ties, and all these like so-called middle class white people, like good hardworking white people, like that's what she was saying in that video. When you see those images like that, she explained to people that the little children in there will take those belief systems and they will grow, and then they will sell those belief systems to their children. Yes, they might change here and there, but the system itself hasn't changed. It hasn't acknowledged it. It hasn't dealt with it. It only acts like it doesn't exist. So they will not be held accountable for it, because it's the system that will be held accountable for it. And since the system thinks like or acts like it doesn't exist, people think it's okay to also act like it doesn't exist. And then when they believe that it's okay to also act like something very important psychologically for individuals and masses of people, when the system itself acts like something very important doesn't exist, people do the same, and then they start to defend the program. And this is where you have this so-called people calling other people reverse racism and all this. How are you starting to defend a system when you don't even know what it is? You don't know what it really means. You don't know how far back it goes. And that's the place where the system wants people to be, reactionary. So in the so-called Black conscious community, you have people saying, don't date that not Black woman, because white supremacy wants you to not date Black women. But that's in reaction to the world of white supremacy, which has largely, it was already a failure in its origins, but it's a failure. It's a failure. The main thing that white supremacy was designed to protect was the genetics of the so-called white race. And that's not even, I just use those terms because there are no white people, there are no black people there. That's also a mind control program to keep people from going into what's really going on here. There are different types of people. There are different cultures. There are different harmonics and music. There are different languages. There are different styles of beings here. And since that has been known, that was exploited by the people who want to call themselves white, because once they've called themselves white, they've created the separation. They created an inherent Hegelian dialectic based upon race. And as long as they maintain the dialogue about that conversation and don't acknowledge all of the stories that are in and around that conversation, then they can maintain that system that shouldn't have existed in the first place. That's my whole point. These systems shouldn't have existed in the first place. And if that's the case, if you can hear me saying that, then you have to also ask yourself, well, why were these things created in the first place? Why was white supremacy created in the first place? What kind of benefits were resulting from colonization of the entire earth plane? What resulted by people hating themselves because they were told that they're nothing more than a monkey? That's still going on today. This is 2018. 2018. This is no different. If this is still going on in international ads, what do you think would happen if the law wasn't prohibiting people from doing what they were doing, like back in the 60s and 50s, like in 40s, lynching people and all that other shit? Like how the murderers of Emmett Till just got off and laughed about it and walked out of the court. To this day, that stuff has not been acknowledged. What it does is, just as much as you can understand that white supremacy shouldn't even have existed, yet we have to deal with all this stuff. That's the part where the program wants to keep you, where you're dealing with stuff, you're reacting to stuff, and you don't do anything about it because you don't know what to do, because you don't know who you are. You don't know what you are. And the systems that are surrounding us are so complex that we spend most of our time reacting to the shit that's around us. So this is what Donald Trump represents. He represents something that is so erratic, so chaotic. He's like chaos embodied. He's a man-child filled with chaos embodied. His very existence is so conflicting. He has an entire nation of people looking at him like, what the hell do you think you are? First of all, Native American treaties. Second of all, Christopher Columbus colonizing and stealing and genociding, murdering the people of this land, destroying all of these resources. He is an entertainer. He has to maintain distraction from people going into those stories and putting those pieces together. He is basically an embodiment of what the mainstream media is meant to do. The mainstream media is Operation Mockingbird. All of it. The award shows, the movies, the cartoons, everything is Operation Mockingbird. It's not just about mind controlling you about certain systems within the program. It's about total dominant mind control over your entire experience. This is what heliocentrism does when it sucks you into an illusory universe, and it distracts you. So just as much as Trump tells you to make America great again, NASA and Elon Musk tell you we need to go to Mars and the moon again. Why? Because that's a distraction from the fact that heliocentrism shouldn't have existed in the first place. So Trump tells you we should make America great again, because he doesn't want you to realize that the way America is today, the way the United States is today, shouldn't exist the way it is now. And we are knowledgeable of this information and aware enough and powerful enough to cut the legs out of this system completely if we were to gather our thoughts and focus our energy into a particular subject. So in reference to like the Black Panther movie that's coming out next Friday, all these people up in arms, all happy about how many tickets it's already sold, how it's going to be the best this and the best that. That's on purpose. That's basically another version of your first black president. It's your first black superhero, modern superhero movie. It's the same shit. So people have nothing. So when you have people who have nothing, they will pride themselves in anything. So the Black Panther movie represents that same shallow mentality that people are going to be celebrating to the umpteenth degree and never acknowledge the fact that this is a total mind control program and a total slap in the face to the Black Panthers and what they actually represented. It's a total distraction from that. Because once you really, in reference to people who are making videos or content creators or even just talking to people, or even if you're talking to your kids, even if you're going to go take them to go see the Black Panther movie, share with them the perspective, because that was the whole intent with the video that I uploaded before this one was, how are you going to make a movie about Black Panthers? It's like they made that movie about Flint, about the water. And they made the movie about, they spent millions of, Queen Latifah was in that movie. They made spent millions of dollars making a movie about the water in Flint, Michigan. And the water in Flint, Michigan is still fucked up. Where are our priorities? How can that happen? The same way that can happen is the same way because people are so distant from their own power, so distant from their own meaning and purpose, so chaotic because that's the way society is, that we can't even acknowledge the reality of the issue at hand. So a very obvious reality that is present right now is that there are still political prisoners being held accountable for shit that was an obvious, it's been proven to be a hit by the FBI, by the state. So you have COINTELPRO that existed to attack the Black Panthers. And not only the Black Panthers, but the American Indian movement and all kinds of other people that were out there talking about the way the system is. So you have people like Mumia Abu-Jamal, who's in jail right now as a political prisoner, a Black Panther, a very intelligent man who's in jail right now because he was framed by the government. An actual Black Panther, and people are still protesting his imprisonment. People are still talking about it. But what happens? Everybody's so distracted and so like vested in the fact that we got our first black president and our first black superhero movie that you're basically having these grown-ass people buy into cartoons. Barack Obama was a cartoon. He was a political cartoon. He didn't do shit for anything other than the system itself, period. He was there to quiet people up after the shithole that was George W. Bush and the war on terrorism, to come and fix everything. Did he fix anything? No. He actually made it worse because you allowed him to do that. Because we didn't ask the right questions. So you have the Black Panther movie coming out. If people who are talking or whatever, start sharing information in reference to an actual Black Panther. If you don't want to talk about Mumia, talk about Leonard Peltier, who was also falsely imprisoned by the FBI from the COINTELPRO work and still in jail today. 70-something years old right now. Leonard Peltier. Mumia's up there too. Political prisoners. If all of the celebrities of all the black conscious community and all these other groups of people came together and said, look, stop celebrating this Black Panther movie that's designed to mind control you and your children and to have the same kind of dumbing down effect on you and your children. Stop, take all that energy you're going to put into speaking about that and focus it on a real Black Panther. Focus it on a real issue that needs to be dealt with. Actually help somebody. So that's why I kind of got pissed off when I saw that image of a guy who raised $27,000 to get movie tickets to take these kids to go see the Black Panther movie. Now, certain people are going to attack me because they're, oh, you're this and you're that. Why don't you do this and that? And that's exactly what happened. But we have to realize that not everybody is thinking from the same place. Some people are thinking from their pocketbook. Some people are thinking from their Western education. Some people are thinking from their civil rights version of revolution. Some people are thinking from their InfoWars version of revolution or their Bernie Sanders version of revolution. And it's the minority of people that are actually thinking about the system itself and coming from a revolution from the fact that the system is designed to maintain enslavement. You're either a slave or you're not. That's it right now. There is no middle class. There's no like first world, second world countries. There are only people who are in charge of the way things are in that broken illusory system. And then there's people who are subjected to it. That's it. That's what it really boils down to. So any of these other like mid-level sort of, oh yeah, well, we're making progress here with this and that. If you're talking about Bernie Sanders' progress, get the fuck out of here with all that nonsense. Anything you're talking about, this whole Trump thing, and this is the thing. These images are going to show to you how sick and disgusting this system is. Still in 2018, this shit is going on. And people will defend this. They're still defending this. No different than people defending Trump and his whole calling people shitholes and their country shitholes. That's how far from reality these people are. And that's why I said, since there are no white people, the illusion of white supremacy that people don't acknowledge, I'll call the people who are defending that, you're white. You're a white person, which is basically a blank nothing, just like this system. Until white people can step out of that white sort of subconscious pride and that, oh, well, we just got to move on and deal with what we're doing right now. They have to do that because they themselves are the fucking immigrants for the superpower country of this entire earth plane. They can't say anything against Trump talking about immigration because he helps to ignore that truth. He helps to ignore that. And that's why he exists right now. Because the consciousness of the people, the information that's available to the people is so revealing, it's so telling about the nature of the system itself that they have to have somebody so far gone from reality, so out there, that he's such a distraction you can't at all acknowledge any of the systems that are at the foundation of his ignorance. And when you have that large of a gap between truth and illusion, you have chaos amongst people because you will have a large majority of people who don't know what to do, who are trying to protect the system, to just jump on board anything he says or anything that the people in and around his circle says. And he just represents a thought process of illusion. Well, meanwhile, you have people who are going into their inner truth and finding out this information from their self, from the inside out. But you also have subcategories of that too, where you have people who are going to half-ass. They're on their way to figuring stuff out. And on the way, a lot of people just drop their luggage and they stay in that in-between space because they pride themselves in just being not like Trump. And that's good enough in society today. But that's not good enough to address the system itself. So they want people to fall into the space of just being good enough. As long as you're like Barack Obama in some kind of way, you're good enough. As long as you're not like Donald Trump in some kind of way, you're good enough. And as long as you're good enough in their world, you set the definition for a slave. And that's exactly what they want. And they will celebrate you for that. They will give you Black Panther movies. They will give you award shows. They will nominate you for this. They'll nominate you for that. They'll even sacrifice some of their heavy hitters like Harvey Weinstein and Kevin Spacey. Like they'll get some of those real shit bags out of there just to make you think that things are changing. And it's just like I saw this, the movie The Post yesterday, and I wanted to reference this real quick because it's like, just like the other movies that I've referenced, like the Jason Bourne movie, they want you to believe that they have good people in the systems because they want you to believe that the system can be fixed by these good people. So you have the good FBI agents in the Jason Bourne movie who's helping Jason Bourne, and he's a superhero, so everything's okay. So that dumbs you down. You totally focus on the superhero and totally ignore the criminal acts, the criminal intent of the system itself. You totally ignore it because the script as it was written was meant for you to ignore it. The same thing happens in reference to like the Post movie that I just watched right now. The Post not only does the same thing, it makes you celebrate. It's kind of like how they used Tom Hanks. They used Tom Hanks to celebrate the system. So in Apollo 13, that was basically an apple pie sitting on top of an American flag during the Game 7 of the World Series, and it's just like every free hot dogs and you know, anything American. I mean, it was just the most so-called American ass movie you can ever imagine because they were celebrating. They needed something to celebrate in reference to the space program. So they used their heavy hitter like Tom Hanks to make people believe that the way Tom Hanks believes in this reality is the way you should believe. So if you are like Tom Hanks or you trust Tom Hanks, you're good enough. So the same thing went, like I said, with Obama. As long as you're like kind of like him or striving to be like him, you're good enough. If you trust Tom Hanks, you're good enough. And that's what they're banking on. So the very nature of Hollywood itself is just like the Jason Bourne thing. The nature of Hollywood is to make you think that there are good people in Hollywood that are revealing information about the system for your benefit. It's a total fucking illusion. It's an illusion. They're doing that to desensitize you. Just like they want you to think that the Logan Paul suicide thing, like he was showing a dead body, like a suicide in the suicide forest. For people who don't know about that, a YouTuber's got something like however many tens of millions of subscribers to his YouTube channel, just a real ignorant ass kid, just like 20 something, 22 years old or some shit, like just a little fucking nothing out there being American stupid in Japan, just totally disrespecting an entire nation of people with not only the suicide video, but the other vlogs that he did where he was just running around Japan just being totally ignorant and disrespectful to the Japanese people. And the cream on the cake was he showed that suicide victim on YouTube, went viral. Not only went viral, but YouTube put that video #1 on the trending page. And YouTube didn't even take the video down. He took the video down because of all the flack he was getting. So you can see YouTube is a psychological operation. It's designed. They are pulling analytics out of this. They're seeing how long they can do something. What effect this is going to have. Are people going to defend him? And yes, you have little ass kids defending this inhumane asshole. You know what that does to a child mind? Now, this is the thing. Not only does a child have to be exposed to that shit, but they are now creating a psychology within them to defend such a thing. Instantaneous desensitization. And YouTube knew this. Google knew this. The government knows this. And this is not to promote any kind of like, oh yeah, let's get the government in on like censoring and all that. They're already censoring shit. The point is, you can see Google is owned and manipulated by the government. If they're putting a dead suicide victim body in front of millions and millions of kids on the trending page, you have to see that as a psychological operation. Nothing less. The same way that they're normalizing the sexualization of these children. Like 11 on here, a 13-year-old girl from Stranger Things is pinned as Hollywood's sexiest actors or some shit like that. What is the mentality that you are trying to protect when you do not address the Western so-called civilization? It is not civilization. What are you trying to protect? You have so-called conspiracy theories out here, still following Alex Jones, still following TYT, still hoping for the forefathers to come through with their constitution that ain't even theirs. They ain't get that shit from out of God and all that. No, they got it from the fucking Native Americans, the Iroquois Confederacy. So all of this nonsense that people are trying to protect, it's because you are fitting inside the world of good enough. And who set the terms for that? The system itself. So if you're good enough, you are the slave. You just don't know it. Barack Obama, the most well-dressed, well-educated slave. And anybody else in that system is the same way. Because the biggest enslavement is your psychology, the bridge to your spiritual enslavement. Because ultimately, you will never enslave your own spirit. You can't do that. But your definite psychology can be enslaved, which will lock you out of your spirituality. So you have all of these systems that are in and around this idea of change, forward progress. And one of the main things that are out there, the same thing that happened, like I mentioned with, I didn't finish in reference to the Post. So you have the heaviest hitters, Meryl Streep and Tom Hanks in the movie The Post, that is supposed to be exposing information, the corruption about the Johnson, Nixon, Kennedy administration in reference to Vietnam and everything that went down there. Now, what do you think they did? in that movie. Tom Hanks and Meryl Streep are the superheroes. They used Meryl Streep to push the feminist agenda, just like they used Oprah to do the same thing, because Trump represents the most pig-headed piece of shit, nothing Western so-called civilized man, which is a total oxymoron. It's every, excuse me, it's the illusion within the illusion. So they have to so-called empower women to fight the fight that is still within a box of a limited frame of consciousness. No different than the way they put up Black Lives Matter out there to talk about so-called black situations like criminal injustice and all this other stuff that's going on. But it's designed to release the pressure to make you think that things are changing. So in reference to the post, you had people in there crying and clapping and, oh, good job. I can't believe it's the freedom of press that's saved. They released all that information. Good job. Thank you, Tom Hanks. Thank you, Meryl Streep. Thank you, the Washington Post. You guys did it. Where would we be without you? And ooh, a woman was in charge of the Washington Post. And they walking her out of that courtroom, down the stairs, surrounded by these doughy-eyed women just looking at Meryl Streep like, oh my goodness, thank you so much. Woman who just, stood in her feminine power and beat the Nixon administration and beat the system. Yay! So they made you proud of what? Another illusion. The same way Apollo 13 did the same thing for heliocentrism. Buying into that system deeper and deeper and deeper. And they use their heavy hitters. Tom Hanks is in there. Just by Tom Hanks being in there, he promotes a level of consciousness of trust in the system. You trust the system. You trust you think he's doing something for you when he reveals information like that? You feel that way. You got them old ass people in there, them old white people that were in, because I'm in that area where it's kind of like that's the majority is older so-called white people. They in there clapping. Oh yeah, thank you for saving us. That is the pride. That is the world that these people are trying to protect. And when you have people clapping and crying and feeling so vested into this system, there's no way in hell you're going to tell them everything that you're crying and believing in is bullshit. You can't tell them that. You might as well tell them that the earth ain't a globe. It's the same mentality. So the same effect that people have in priding themselves about the science of the globe is the same effect that people have when they go in to see a movie like Jason Bourne, The Post, Black Panther, and any of these other movies that are out there to make you believe in the system. They make you believe in it. What was that other movie that Miss Sloan movie? Same thing. That was about the relationship between the politicians and the lobbyists and how criminal that is. How everything is just about whoever's got the money, who's ever bought out, and the politicians are just lobbyists with different titles. They work for the lobbyists. They don't work for the people. They work for the lobbyists. So when you have these Hollywood, that you believe Hollywood's changing, you believe the system is for you. You believe, see, that's the thing. For people who don't actually do the research and see how fucked up this system is, they will default to whatever is natural, whatever's being put out through the mind control program. So even when I was watching the movie The Post yesterday, I allowed myself to feel everything that was going through there. I don't fight it. I want to feel it so I know how they're making people feel. So when they had Meryl Streep walking out of that courtroom victorious, being surrounded by all these women, I wanted to feel what was going on. So you have all these teary-eyed people around you. You feel that sense of, oh, I'm so glad they did it. Like, they did it for us. They have values. They have morals. They're here for us. Oh, I trust Meryl Streep so much. I trust Tom Hanks and Oprah Winfrey and Barack Obama and beyond. I trust them so much. How dare you say anything about this system? That's basically people's mother. Meryl Streep and Tom Hanks, that's the mama and papa of this illusory, ignorant ass system. And Oprah's like the big mama. She's the single mother of every black woman and black man in this entire nation who believes in that level of consciousness. Everybody else who's just like obviously pointing out her ridiculousness, they already know they ain't her. That's not her. That's not their mother, because they know. But excuse me. But that doesn't take away from people who need that, who have those daddy issues, who have those mama issues, who need that motherly and fatherly figure out there to act as that position, to have them fighting the system for them so the people won't do it themselves. So in reference to actual movements, like this image is saying, the failure of black men to define black manhood has allowed feminism to define it for us. So you have the feminism movement effeminizing men saying, well, you can be anything. There are no genders. There are no this. There are no that. This is your real strength. Just be you and support us. The fact is with feminism, you only need feminism because the patriarchal program existed in the first place. If you're talking about feminism, most people in the mainstream feminism movement do not acknowledge the very nature of the system itself. Because if you were to acknowledge the very nature of the system itself, you wouldn't have feminists. There would be no need for feminists, because you will have an understanding of what's going on. But since people don't understand shit, they buy into whatever is catchy. What's the catchiest hashtag out there? Oh, you're a oh, you believe it? Oh, well, me too. I believe in that. That whole Me Too movement. They need people to follow shallow versions of reality. Because once you follow those shallow versions of reality, you'll walk yourself off that cliff. And the only person that's responsible for that is you. And the thing that one of the driving forces behind why I do what I do on here is because, yeah, it's you, but a lot of you that's out there, a lot of them people out there, they got babies, they got kids. I don't have any kids myself, but I have a goddaughter that's going to be surrounded by your kids, or those kids that are out there who are going to be raised in the same ignorant ass perspectives that are being promoted by the mainstream media. So I don't want that to happen. I would like, when I'm not here anymore, my goddaughter and all the kids, all my friends who are having kids, I want them to be surrounded by people who are informed, to think for themselves, to not be reactionary. And there's a lot of things in the so-called black conscious community right now that are not conscious at all. They're not critically thinking at all. Largely a lot of that shit that empowers a lot of people, not everybody, but a lot of the perspectives in the so-called black conscious community are empowered from a reactionary perspective. In reaction to white supremacy, in reaction to the way things are right now. And there's a difference in power in gaining and gathering your power from a reaction to a broken system and gaining and acknowledging your power from the inside out. They're two different things. The thing is, before you can get to the inner space of acknowledgement of that power, you have to first destroy all of the reactionary stuff. Not in a sense of ignoring it or acting like it doesn't exist, but going deep into the essence of what it is. Get everything of value out of it. Like, dive into the Black conscious community. Get everything out of it. Soak everything that is of an understanding, overstanding, and understanding out of it. And leave all of the extra shit there. Because other people need that. You might not need that. There's a lot of attachments to a lot of perspectives that are being promoted through the so-called Black conscious community that are reactionary. And they will end up doing the same thing. And this is the thing. They are reactionary on purpose because they have the same effect on people as Hollywood does. Hollywood is reactionary. Hollywood makes you react a certain way. And the system needs you to do that. So just as much as you can understand that the so-called flat earth community has been propped up to promote a certain level of consciousness, a certain perspective in reference to your relationship with earth, and your relationship with the illusionists that put this stuff out there, the same effect that goes down with that, when you understand that there are controlled oppositions placed into those positions, you can understand the same thing for the Black conscious community. And they can be surrounded. And there's so many leaders in there, you don't know. So this is a good example to get into with like D.L. Hughley. I'll get into that, and it's the last slide in here. I don't know if I'm there yet, but I wanted to share this information with you guys, so check it out. Like I referenced in the other earlier in this video, this is a good example of the shallow perspectives that are being promoted and projected into our children, into our minds. It's like, get your best friend goals, get your relationship goals, get your career goals, get your family goals. But nobody has spiritual goals. You don't have any revolutionary goals because you've bought into the system you've reacted to the system as it's been presented to you. And a lot of people who pride themselves as being successful are successful with chains around their ankles and their wrists and gags over their mouth. Everybody being paid millions and millions of dollars to make these music industry albums. Everybody getting paid millions and millions of dollars to make these mind control ass movies. All these politicians that are getting paid under the table by these lobbyists to promote a particular idea into the legislature. All these people getting paid millions and millions of dollars, that ain't nothing but a gag order. The money that's being pumped into these artists, the actors, the musicians, the politicians, your so-called conspiracy theorists, your TV show hosts, all of these people getting paid, that money in their pockets, that money in their bank account, you might as well get all of that money, ball it up into a big ass ball. And the people who have the most money have the biggest ball of money. Shove it down their fucking throat. And see that that's why they can't say anything. And this is what I said in reference to Dave Chappelle. Dave Chappelle went hard on a lot of his skits in his show. In some cases. But when he went stand up on Netflix, he went Netflix hard. He didn't go like that whole politics thing, and like he he spoke in metaphors. He went deep in a lot of ways, but you could have went deep. And this is not to have expectations on individuals like that. This is more to have an emphasis on the amount of money. If Chappelle, like if I were to ask Dave Chappelle right now, could you have gone harder than you did on Netflix? What do you think he's going to say? Yeah, I could have went harder. But you can't go too hard because you got to play the game. And that game is the gag order. The logistics with that is by him possibly saying, yeah, I could have went harder. You know he could have went harder. But he went Netflix hard on that. You know he could have went harder. The logistics with that is that if he did go too hard, it would mess with that 60 million. And what that says is that 60 million is a big ball shoved down your throat. And you can't do anything about it. Because you're playing that game. Politicians play that game. Actors play that game. Comedians play that game. Athletes play that game. They can only go so far. And they don't want to go beyond that. Your so-called leader of the free world. If this isn't an example of how ridiculous this system is, I don't know what is. If this isn't an example of how jacked up this entire system is, I don't know what is. Why do we want all these people from shithole countries here? Excuse me. We should bring in, not only did he say that, that's racist enough, but he added an exclamation point on it. Why do we want all these black, let me translate this shit. Why do we want all these black and brown shithole ass people from shithole countries here? We should bring in more wonderful, civilized, Anglo-Saxon people from places like Norway. Real immigrants. Not the dirty ones. We need healthy, clean, friendly people from Norway. Yeah, that kind of immigration. Not these shithole ass, dirty, stinking ass, AIDS having ass people everywhere. You see what's going on? It's desensitization. That's what's happening. And since people are so far from thinking from themselves, you're going to have the mass of people who have been following him are going to continue following and defending him because they have no other options. Their other options are to think for themselves, and that's too scary. They can't do it. And the system banks on that. So you have people defending people like Trump. They're slaves. They're stuck in there. Largely, many cases won't get out. Sad truth, but it's true. A lot of people ain't going to get out. And that's just the truth. And with this whole thing, you're going to have a lot of people that's just going to be like, man, fuck it. I'm just going to be a racist piece of shit and I don't care about anything. I'm going to be this way till I die. You're going to have people in that space until they die, and everything in the spectrum in between that and something other than that. You will always have that. So this system is playing the numbers, which is why it's so extreme, which is why they have to have a Trump out there, which is why they have to have an Oprah out there, and all these other things that are going on to promote this chaos within the system. So you have people who are definitely trying to protect the white supremacy program, saying, yeah, this is the way it is, and I love it. So that's just the way it's going to be. And I will defend anybody that says that this is the only program. We're the best nation in the world. They don't care about anything else. They're living in a world, a universe of vague. Everything is so vague because once you nail things down, too many things are revealed. So you're going to have people protect and defend that program. Then you're going to have people who are just like, well, they've been so distraught, so beaten down for so many years and generations that all they want, their horizon, their sun that rises, is just equality. So that is a known factor in the equation of mind control, and the system knows that, so they do that. They promote that. They promote that by showing the inequality more so. It's a whole backward subconscious thing. So they promote equality by promoting inequality. And as long as you're focused on equality, you will never allow yourself to think for yourself, to critically think at all. Because your equal space of thinking is just based upon somebody else, being equal with somebody or something else. So you're going to have people who are just trying to be cool in the slave house. And you have people all over in every kind of community. Flat earth community, black conscious community, new age community. A lot of them were just going to, they just want something to change for the better. And they're going to eat that up. And that's why I said a lot of them are your worst enemies, because they're going to be the ones that actually sell you how jacked up. They're going to sell you the next mind control program. It's not the obvious ones that are just racist. It's not Trump. He's not the biggest threat to what's going on. In actual fact, Oprah is more of a threat to this system growing and shifting into another layer of mind control. Oprah is more of a threat to the people than Donald Trump is. That's basic math. Trump is already acknowledged, known to be old, dead, crusty ass, old school mentality. Oprah's fresh. She out there. She's like, no, let's make this mind control program even more complex. Let's change this for the better. Let's do this. She's more of a threat than 100 Donald Trumps. Now, to close it all out, this is a good example of what I just laid out. There's 3 situations that are going on in this one little screenshot that you can see right now. 2 comments and the fact that D.L. Hughley is talking about what he's talking about and the way he's talking about it right now. So that pride that I was talking about is also based upon the system being so bad that you just have to be average. You just have to be normal, and then you're okay. So this is being promoted by these Hollywood people. So you have in this storyline, D.L. Hughley responds to Donald Trump's comments about African nations. He basically takes the same perspective of how shitty that I said that Donald Trump is. Stick the same perspective. The only thing is he's still selling the slave mentality. He's still selling the slave storyline. I don't know if he knows about it or not, but he's definitely selling it, and he has weight to push. So people are just going to believe in him and what he's saying, no different than they believe in like Barack Obama or people who believe in Donald Trump. He's not making or allowing people to think for themselves. He's using emotion to have people believe in his perspective. The thing with his perspective is that it's extremely flawed and layered with all this slave talk. So he sounds valid because he sounds way more intelligent than Donald Trump, and his perspectives are very much on point, but there's that one little crumb that's still in there, that is still believing in this system in some kind of way, and is also still selling the historical perspectives that are still encased in the mind control programs that were generations before now. And the proof is, you can watch the video and listen for yourself, but these comments that I'm going to share with you just basically show it. So in reference to that, you can see on the very bottom where he says, hold on, DL, there were African people here before any slave ship came. So is that not true? That's the truth. So is he going to acknowledge that? Is he going to say anything about that? Probably not off the bat, because that takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of research to go through that. And then a lot of things need to change in your entire dialogue. So most people will just avoid it. So that's one very, very important thing that's inadvertently a mind control program that's being promoted by D.L. Hughley and everybody else who's using the punching bag that is Donald Trump to make themselves look good, to promote this chaos, whether they're doing it knowingly or unknowingly. The other program that exists is the defense mechanism in people who are trying to protect this system. So you have at the very top, this guy in one line praises D.L. Hughley for what he's saying. It was kind of cut off because I wanted to get both of them in there. But he basically praises and then goes into saying, but it's important to mention that not all white people have it great or live in mansions. Here, hell, we're all exploited by the government. This is the exact mentality that the system wants people to be in. The majority of people, so-called white people, that are in that mainstream consciousness, at best, they are thinking like this. The problem with you thinking like that, or people who do think like that, is not only is that going to be the next program to sell people into the next mind control program, but from my perspective and other people's perspective who know what this actually means, what is the problem here in that comment? You bring about all of these injustices, lynching, burning, psychological warfare, white supremacy, the post-traumatic slave syndrome, all of the events that have added up to, and the list goes on and on and on. The economy, the education designed to keep people down, like designed to focus. I mean, there was names about black and brown people that were created to make people psychologically hate themselves. All of that exists. And yet, you have these so-called white people who got the nerve to stand up on their pedestal and say, yeah, all that shit, whatever you're talking about, fuck you. We're all struggling right now. Don't even go in. I'm poor. I have, poor friends that they're white. They're out. You know how fucked up that is? Yet that's an actual thing that's happening right now. That's accepted in this reality. It's not only accepted, that's one of the main responses I get on this channel when they do get into these conversations, and the main responses on other channels too. Because that's another way to desensitize people from the depths of this programming. They want to make things so bad, and that's what Trump represents. They want to make things so bad that it's so bad you can't acknowledge how bad it is. Like, you can't go into the details. And in fact, it's so bad that it just affects everybody. And since you didn't go into the details, you don't really know how bad it actually is. And you don't know how far they'll actually go to maintain their own system. So this is the problem. This is the main problem that I see with so-called white people, is that they'll get up here real quick. As soon as this video comes up, somebody will probably jump in the comment section and say something like that. Or any of the other videos, you can look in the comment section and see that. The thing is, in the comment section, this is just a representation of what people are actually thinking. I could go out and talk to people on the street and they'll have the same effect. Well, isn't everybody struggling right now? That's the biggest problem I see. One of the biggest problems I see is because instead of, and that goes back to what Dr. Joy was saying earlier in this video when I mentioned, and then what she said in the latter part of the video I uploaded yesterday. That comment that you're reading, it's important to mention that not all white people have it great or live in mansions. Hell, we're all exploited by the government. That comment is a direct representation of the lack of empathy that so-called white people, a lot of them, will not be allowed to experience because the way they were raised, the way the system is, and what they've been presented, their post-traumatic slave syndrome. That's how it's expressed in their world. Lack of empathy, lack of compassion. They can't. But since they want to maintain being a good person, they have to say, well, okay, I'll acknowledge your struggles, but I'm going to water it down with, we're all struggling. We all struggle. None of that stuff matters because we're all struggling. Isn't that feel a lot better now that everybody's all one? Stop being racist, you with all your black talk about how bad the blacks had it. I see white people homeless on the street all the time. Don't come in here talking about slavery's over with, okay? The civil rights is over with, okay? We passed your law so we wouldn't lynch and burn you anymore. Aren't you proud of that? Why don't you just get over it? Why don't we just move on? That's the sickest shit that's out there right now. And it's backed up by these comments like that. And 32 likes on that. That comment is just an example of what the New Age community represents as a whole, and what Oprah represents in her relationship to the New Age community, and how they're going to try to sell that same mentality into the mainstream populace by promoting Oprah to you, or whoever else they want to promote. Anybody that sits in that position of politics is going to say, or even talking about politics, they're going to say the same thing. It's not. Goodness gracious, I'm going to close it out after this because this is just sick. I can't even talk about this anymore. The thing with the New Age community, the alien agenda, this whole desensitization program, the apathy that goes along with comments like this, and shallow ass perspectives that are being promoted by these actors and comedians and politicians that are out there. They want you to fix the system. They want you to ignore all of these things that are going on. And they want you to not at all empathetically feel anything other than what they tell you to feel. You need to buy into their world. And it's sick. And people are celebrating this sickness and disease. But the only way anything is going to change is if the people start to see this themselves. And you're not going to be able to see it if you vest all of your energy and your perspectives in somebody else. If you're vesting all of your perspectives in somebody else and how they perceive their reality, you'll never know what's going on. And if you never know what's going on, you never know how what's going on is going on. And if you don't know how what's going on is going on, then you sure as hell ain't gonna know why what's going on is going on. So we're 3 or 4 layers separated from our own critical thoughts. And you can see that as levels of consciousness. The who to the what to the how to the why. This is why kids ask the complex question of why. They need these parents, these adults to engage with them. They're asking, they're begging their parents. Please tell me what this is about. Please do not shut me down. Why are these things? And then what do the adults say? Just go outside and play. Don't think about it anymore. That's the status quo. So I just wanted to do that follow-up of the last video and tie it into the psychology not only of the Matrix, but this is even the psychology of the New Age program, the psychology of Flat Earth, and everything. Flat Earth is basically like the New Age. Once they're promoting it to go mainstream, it's going to have the same effect. We can't think about all those bad things anymore. We're all struggling. We're all in the same boat. Are we now? Really? Tell that to our ancestors. See if they think the same way. Say, you got to get out of the past. Yeah, all right. If you're running away from your past, you'll never be able to anchor yourself in the present moment, and sure as hell won't know what you're doing in the future. Spinning wheels is exactly where the system wants people to be. So that's pretty much what I had for this build. Thank you for joining me. And until next time, from all my relations, peace, love, and harmony.